Welcome to Sister Friends Cups and Conversation. I'm your host, Teresa Cooper, and I'm glad that you've joined me today. We're getting ready to have a conversation about mother hunger. It's a new terminology. I think it'll be interesting to you, and it's also going to be helpful. Are you ready to have a conversation? Let's go. Welcome to Sister Friends Cups and Conversation. I'm your host, Teresa Cooper, and I have my co-host, Miss Catherine Young.
Glad to be here again.
Yes, we have kicked off our season 8, and Kathy, I think it's going well.
It's going really well. We're going to have some powerful, meaningful conversations. Get ready.
Yes. And so we have some great guests today. Miss Chantal Small, she's very familiar. She's been here before.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And then we have a new sister friend, Miss Ashley Rose. Yes. Ashley, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for a living?
So I am a licensed master social worker, and I have experience in the medical field, behavioral health, as well as law also.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for considering me.
Yes. So Miss Ashley Rose is the professional at the table today. And so our special cup today says, work hard, be nice. So this is our featured cup. This talks to me specifically because I know how to work hard, and my husband's always telling me, be nice. So I got the work part down. It's the be nice that I'm working on every day.
I understand.
Be nice. Be nice. Be nice. I promise it'll change your life.
It'll change your life. Yes.
That's actually a song. Okay.
Yes.
So this is our featured cup, and we're ready to have a conversation.
Ready.
Our sister friends have our Sister Friends cup.
Yes.
And so, yes, take a minute and invite a friend, tag, share, tell them to come on in the room, around the table. We're getting ready to have a meaningful conversation.
Yes.
So today we're going to be talking about a word, a phrase it's a new phrase, and it's mother hunger. It's a new terminology for the lack of nurturing. And this new term was coined by a lady named Kelly McDaniel.
Okay.
She's a great book out. And I heard her on one of the other talk shows. I can't remember quite which one. And immediately when she began to talk about mother hunger, I knew that's a conversation that we need to have at the Sister Friends table. By design, ladies, by design and by purpose, women are born with the innate ability to nurture.
Yes.
I really believe that it's something that God deposited on the inside of us. That ability can be disrupted, and it can be altered by trauma, by lack of nurturing, and by environmental factors. The birth of a child awakens that nurturing gene. Now, we know some women, they birth children and they say they struggled. It didn't happen for them naturally. So we're not even trying to suggest that this is for that this happens to every woman. But I do believe that God has uniquely fashioned us, and He's put things internally within us that are innate to what it means to be a woman. And nurturing is one of those. And so when we have children, what happens is that nurturing gene, it's at its highest effect. But if it's not awoken up in you after having children, then we have to dig a little deeper to see, was there some type of trauma, was there lack of an example of nurturing? Was there an environmental, an outside happening that disrupted your development? And so that's kind of what we want to talk about today. Can I ask you, ladies, have you all heard of that word mother hunger before?
No, I had never heard of it
No, I haven't either.
until, we were discussing topics and then you explained to me what it meant. And it's really needed.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and the both of you work in the care of women.
Yes.
You do parenting at
Uh-huh.
Care Parenting
Mm-hmm.
Center here in Shreveport, and Chantal, you're the executive director over care parenting, but also over care pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
And so you both deal with women
Yes.
on a daily basis.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
And you had never heard of the word hunger, mother hunger.
I had never heard of it.
Okay. How about you, Miss Ashley Rose?
No, I have not heard of the term, but after you told me about it, I did do some extensive research,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
and it is a very nice term. I love the framework of it that Miss
Okay.
McDaniel did also, so I'm
Yeah.
excited to dive in.
So basically, mother hunger is the definition for adult women that have been that have lost the nurturance or the protection or the guidance of a mother. We're living. I mean, most of us, I would say, have thought in our subconscious, or we've said it to ourselves,
Yeah.
like, were they trained?
Yeah.
Or like, did someone guide them?
Yes.
And you do it out of curiosity because you know that there's some things that you can only get. There's certain information, there's certain grooming, there's certain things that only can come from a mother.
Yeah.
And so when we start looking at a generation, not just one, but we're talking about decades
Yes.
of adult women who we've come in contact with on a daily basis, and you can see that there's something lacking. There was something missing,
Yeah.
and we didn't know what it was. And I think this terminology helped define what it was that we were seeing, the
Yeah.
lack of parenting.
Yeah.
If you just break it down from just parenting to just mothering.
Yes.
So, Miss Ashley, tell us a little bit about what happens when there is mother hunger, when that occurs, when there's a lack of guidance, lack of nurturing, lack of protection that's given and bestowed upon a child.
So from a child, when dealing with children, because I've also worked with dealing with children and families.
Okay.
So that's kind of my thing. But when you have a child that lacks that nurturing and that guidance and that mothering, what happens is first of all, it starts in the womb.
Okay.
And I think that's very important to say.
Yes.
Whatever the mother feels, the baby feels also. And it really affects the chemical imbalances in the brain. And so then when that child grows up in that environment in utero, then you have to birth out this child. And depending on the experience of birth, that can have a lot to do with it. And then you get to the upbringing and the parenting and the mothering of that child. So when it's bestowed upon them, attachment is very important at that stage of development. That's when attachment and trust is built. And so what happens is you'll have children who will seemingly have behavioral issues, but what they're really having is an innate deep craving that they really, I just need someone, I need somebody. I'm crying and no one is there. Or I'm hungry and no one is feeding me. And so when you have a child dealing with that, they will eventually develop trust issues, or they'll just be pretty open and attached to almost anyone, or they won't attach to anyone at all. It really affects people differently. So you really have to be cognizant of what that child is going through, because if you're not, then you'll have a plethora of issues and you won't know how to solve them. But when you understand the why, then you'll know how to feed that hunger that's missing.
So now you're because you went right to, I love that you went right to in utero,
Yes.
in at birth, in the mother's belly. So if the mother, because we're talking about you zeroed in on pregnancy. I can't imagine, being a child and then becoming a 18-year-old or 21-year-old or 24, 25-year-old, and you're still lacking, or now you're manifesting the fruit of what was lacking, while you were a child.
Yeah.
It's interesting because if in utero while you're pregnant, if a mother is stressed, if a mother is depressed, or
Yeah.
if the whatever, like you say, whatever the mother's feeling,
Yes.
that baby's feeling. So it's birth in stress.
It is. And
Yeah.
then that child actually, and there's scientific evidence behind this biologically, that child will be born with higher cortisol levels.
Okay.
And so then you have the amygdala, which in the brain, which regulates the fight, flight, or freeze syndrome in the body.
Okay.
And that child will have more crying. That child will seem to be hungrier, a little bit more.
wow.
They'll need more nurturing and more guidance, more love. That's why touch is so important. You hear a lot of times they'll say, don't spoil babies, don't pick them up all the time. But, that's such that where that comes from is really an experiment, and they've shown that doesn't work very well.
Right.
So that child needs that love and that care. Sometimes it's just to be held,
Yes.
And so that trauma, if the mom is traumatized, it could be from domestic violence, a difficult pregnancy, things of that nature. That child will feel that, and it'll be born into that. And so you really have to make sure you care for that child a certain way also.
Okay, this is it's great information.
Yeah.
I have wrote down here that oftentimes we talk about daddy issues. We zero in on that, but the lack of motherly nurturing is very prevalent, and it's even more vital
Yes.
than daddy issues. And it reminds me so much why I hate the enemy.
Yeah.
Because if he can get us off topic, if he could get us so focused on dad, and what dad's not doing,
Yeah.
and focusing on father, so to the point that we ignore the realities of what the mom's going through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they say that you can tell the fruitfulness and the fullness and the value that an adult child will have is directly related to the mental health and the emotional health of that mother.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that person's childhood is, as if the mother's happy, if the mother is fulfilled, then the children will be happy, and the children will be fulfilled.
They
Yes.
will.
What are your thoughts on that, Kathy?
We were talking in the bathroom, and I was telling her, and we was talking about that. She was like, "Oh, this is subject I need," and I say, "Yeah." I say I had to go through this because me and my mom, we weren't close when I was younger. We became friends when I became an adult.
Okay.
And so, after we determined what the problem was, I would ask. I said, "Why you didn't what I thought was love me enough?" She thought love was working hard, providing, yada yada.
Right.
And so when you grow up like that, then she started explaining when she found the Lord, because I believe the Lord had a big part to do in it.
Okay.
Explaining the nurture and why she didn't have it, because she didn't get it. So we were talking to Barefoot, I said our parents knew to do what they knew to do.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
And at that point you would have to forgive. But then when my daughter came along, God was intentional. He told me, he said, you need to bond with your daughter. And Jonah was like 2 or 3. And I did not get a job for a year.
Okay.
Nothing opened up for me. And I bonded with my daughter from a young age because I knew she would need it, because I needed it.
Right. Right.
So he was instrumental in making sure that happened for her. Even though I got it at a later age and me and my mom was like this, I needed more when I was younger.
Right. Yeah. So that's really the key is for those, especially those of you that are young moms, or you still have children in your home that's under 18, is to the sooner you become aware,
Yes.
the sooner that you can put a period or an understanding of maybe what it is that you're going through or what it is that you're lacking, then you know how to shift your behavior or to become more educated so that you can show up fully in all the ways that your kids need you to show up.
Yes.
And sometimes, like you said, our parents they did what they knew to do and what was in them to do.
Yes.
We can't give what we don't have.
Exactly.
There was a point, I guess I had to be it was between 35 and 40 that I really started to understand from the sense that I didn't try to necessarily understand my mom as much as I was put in a position to have a grace
Mm-hmm.
and to look at her and say, you look at my life and then look at her and literally be like, I don't know how she
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah.
How did she raise
Yes.
4 daughters?
Yes.
And then count the age.
Yeah.
And so instead of whatever judgment,
Yeah.
instead of whatever the blame or just even having a definition, it didn't matter. It was more like there was a compassion.
Passion. Yes.
And there was a grace to say and to just really understand being a mama is a real
Yeah.
that's a whole human.
It's so
And your mama
a
had
whole human.
4 girls. I
Right.
had 1. I can't even imagine.
Exactly.
4 girls.
I only had 1 daughter too.
Yeah.
And so it's a certain, compassion.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that, Chantal, and I'll let you speak to it, was having Jesus in my life.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, that relationship with the Lord helps you to find and connect those type of dots.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that you don't live or you don't go throughout your life scarred. Life can happen. You can have, stories and traumas and, different things that shaped you, but not to the point where it affects you in a way that you can't fully be who you need to be. You can't fully show up for yourself. He's the only person,
That's
you know what I mean, that can really
Absolutely.
do the healing in your heart.
Absolutely.
So that you can fully show up. What are your thoughts, on that?
Well, I like what Rose was saying too about how it starts in pregnancy and after baby's born. We had an adoption agency, a social worker, come recently and did some training with us, and I think it was her that mentioned how when a baby is born, the baby gives the cues for attachment, and the mom leans into it and responds.
Okay.
It's like a biological workup, and so it's like for her example, she's talking about adoption. If a mom chooses to place for adoption, it is necessary for her grieving and for the baby to be healthy for them to attach. And you would think that it would be harder for her if she attaches. It's like, no, it's necessary for the baby to attach and for her for the grieving process of letting go. And so I think about that. But I like what you were saying about the grace. My mom is not physically affectionate. She was a great mom. She was a hard worker, but I can't remember her ever being physically affectionate. And so I remember asking about it when I was little, and I just kind of, moved along with it. And I didn't notice how it affected me until my husband pointed it out.
Okay.
He said, could
you
it
think
be
it's normal? You just
I just thought it was
that's
normal.
Yeah.
He says, could it be that maybe you don't show as much affection because your mom has never been affectionate? And I thought, I never thought about it. But then I started paying attention to my kid. My kids are teenagers practically now. And so then I would lean into their cues of wanting to sit by me or lean in for their affectionate cues. I paid attention to it more, but I do credit that to the Holy Spirit, especially through my husband.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good.
Let me ask you this, because we've all, in our work, especially the work that we do, we've run across young women, young adults, or even some that are, more older and wiser that have said, well, my mom didn't teach me that. Or, my mom never showed me that. Right? So there's, more and more you're running into, those type of conversations where not just a mom, but now there's my grandma.
Yeah.
And I feel like it has a lot to do with the cost of living and just the just living life and all the working or the education, all the things that it takes to be, productive in society or to have a productive life or to break free from certain levels of poverty or inexperience. And so because there's more time spent away from home and there's more time than it is time at home, it's not that they're doing it on purpose. It's just it's almost as if it's a byproduct. So how do we address that? Practical steps that we could
do to address that. It's interesting that you asked me this question because that was something that was really difficult for me.
Okay.
I'm a PK. My mom was a pastor. And so her time and our time was wrapped up in church a lot. She was always gone and she was in school.
Okay.
They worked a lot. And so I think I went through a lot of mother hunger, just wanting that presence there a lot. And so practical steps we can do, and and I'll practice this in my own time as a mother, because I have 2 little girls, and I know how absence of my parents just from working and life, affected me. So for me, I would first say be aware.
Okay.
We can't fix something if we're not aware of it.
That's really good.
And so we have to really be aware. And I think I contribute my awareness to the Holy Spirit as well, because God just showed me there's no blueprint.
Right.
You have to have grace,
Yes.
have compassion, and then just adjust and do differently. So I think you have to also be aware, be in prayer about what you should do. And I think also we have to be intentional. Especially me being a single mother, it can be really difficult sometimes to juggle the time with me being full-time and having my children majority of the time. So I know from what I did, I'm very intentional about the time that I do have with them.
Okay.
And so even though I am busy and I'm working, don't be on your phone as much in the evening or in the morning. Spend that time with them. I really like to show affection and be cuddly with them in the evenings. And I don't know if you all saw my stories. They wanted to cuddle last night. And so they just cuddled with me. So I would say be aware, be in prayer, be intentional.
Okay.
And then also make daily adjustments in your life so that you can be present and really meet the need of your children. I know for me, at a certain time at the night, I chose not to be on my phone. I know I also tried to provide them with nutritious meals. Even when it came to budgeting and planning, I tried to do things according a certain way so they know that I'm there. When it comes to my job, I plan ahead. If I see that my daughter has a performance on that day, my presence is important for me and it is for her. And so I will put on a calendar, okay, I need this day off at this time, so I can be there present. She doesn't know that I went through all of this on the back end, but what matters to her is that I'm there.
That you're there.
And so I really try to be intentional about that.
You know, in my studying of this, it talked a lot about why women have, sometimes they feel there's a void, that something's missing. Or they may have a sensational pull toward like love or intimate relationships. But then when they get in the relationships, they become dysfunctional because they don't have the tools that they need to properly be. And they say that they contribute that to the mother hunger.
Yes.
Because they weren't nurtured and guided in that way, you know. You know, we hear that, no, my mother didn't teach me that. But then there's another phrase, which was, my mom's not emotionally available to me.
Yes.
Because they could be present, they could be there, but then they could be
closed
detached where they're not emotionally available to you. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of my coworkers a long time ago gave me a great advice when my daughter was a little baby. And she says, when she shares something with you, don't overreact or don't immediately react. So that way she doesn't feel like guarded. And so I remember the first time my daughter was 5 and she had just started a Christian school, mind you. She had just started school and she came home and told me in detail what sex was. And so my question, I was like, oh, where'd you learn that? You know? And I was like, and because she knew in detail, I was like, okay, either something happened to her or someone shared something and I need to get to the bottom of it. But I remembered her advice. And so to this very day, she, is open and she's more guarded in emotions than my son, but she is very open with me. But I can't say that I was that way with my mom because I was always very fearful that I was going to get corrected, And she did it with a good heart. She wanted me to be a good person. But that being said, I think that emotional availability is making space for someone to be their authentic self and share their emotions without any kind of judgment whatsoever. And that can be hard.
One of the things I've noticed about this particular generation of millennials, and it's with the Gen Zs coming right behind them. They're very in touch with their feelings, their emotions, and I love it. I love it, but then I don't love it. But the part that I do love, and me and my daughter are pretty close, and I love that she'll say to me, so, Mom, I'm going to tell you something. And I want to tell you this. And it's not, you don't have to say anything back. I don't need you to say anything back. I just need to tell you. I need you to know. I'm like, okay. And so then she proceeds to tell me, and then I have to like really use all of my, energies
Mm-hmm.
and suppress all of my pastoral abilities, and all of those things to just be present to receive it.
Yes.
And that takes practice.
It does.
It does.
It is not
Oh my
easy.
gosh.
It is
Because you
not
want to,
easy.
as a mom, you want to
Mhm.
give all the wisdom, the guidance, and the protection.
But to
You
have that open door of communication, because
Yes.
I have learned, and I started practicing with my little sister. We're only 2.5 years apart, but she used to always come to me about things. So when I had my daughters, I say, and in me counseling children and families, in me counseling the children and then having sessions with their families involved, them opening up to me, but then who they've known for a day, maybe, versus opening up to their
Yes.
parents. And they're like, I don't understand this. And I have to coach the parents, listen,
Yes.
receive,
Yes.
don't fly off the handle,
Yes.
And it's like, well, I fight for you, I do this. I say, see, that's why she don't want to talk to you.
That's
because you're angry, even though you're doing it to the child's defense.
Yes.
It's all they see is anger,
Yes.
and they see your reaction. And so they're trying to figure out, well, I want to talk to mom about this. But the reaction, because they went off on their person at the grocery store, they did this and they did that, how are they going to react? And so for me also, because I can be emotional. I can be a little dramatic. I try to have to, step back. Just a little bit. And so I have to say, like you, where'd you learn that? And my eyes twitching because I'm trying to figure out where did this come from, because I try to be very cognizant of protecting and sheltering my children from certain things. So when I see them saying things or doing things, I'm like, where did this come from? And I'm tracking, like, okay, they were my dad, they were my mom, so, you really have to try to draw it all in. And it's not to be, you have to really get out of self. You have to think about what that person needs.
Yeah.
I need to be present for them.
But let me ask you, Kathy, how does that happen? Because, how do you don't absorb how this is affecting you, or any type of judgment that it's making about you, you the parent, the mama. So how do you absorb that so that you can fully show up, especially when they're adults? I mean, and because when they're kids, they're just being kids. They're just being kids. They don't know that they're missing that. That becomes their reality. It's when they get out in the real world that they start figuring out, oh, okay. Well, they didn't teach me this, or they didn't, or whatever. And so then they're unpacking that reality, and then you're the parent, you're the mom, the dad, what have you. So they're going to naturally come to you to say, explain this to me.
You know what I had to do with my daughter? I had to teach from her personality and her perspective.
That's really good.
Because I'm a confronter. She is not. So when I would go to her, well, why you didn't hit them back? Why you didn't do this? Why you didn't say something? Why you didn't do that? And that's not her personality. So she was shutting down. And then I had to listen to her tell me where I felt like this and I felt this way. I had to separate my children. And I think that's what happened with a lot of parents. We treat our children like it's like a cookie cutter. We treat them all the same.
I agree with that.
Which I have a son just like me. I didn't have to tell him that. But my daughter, I had to do things differently with her so that she could grow up, and I had to push her to fly. Because I knew if I did it, if she didn't want to do it, I was going to do it for her. So then I had to stop being that helicopter mom guiding over her. Don't let people do this or that. And I had to give her what I didn't get.
That's right.
I had made up in my mind everything that I didn't get as a young woman, young adult. I'm going to put that into my daughter so that she could feel safe, that now she's getting her voice and she's in her 30s, that you right about that. You right about 30? Jonna will be 33 in May. And so she finally got a voice. She still will take a lot, but I don't give her my opinion. You should have did this. I don't do that no more, because that's not her element. And I think we really need to raise our children differently according to their personality and who they are, and then by letting the Holy Ghost teach and guide us on how we should train that particular child.
I think that too goes even with the healing of if your mother was exempt from certain things that you needed, knowing that maybe it had to do with their nature and their personality, or their own trauma. But that did give me some grace when I realized my mom at a certain age. I was like, why didn't she give me all this affection? I thought, but that's not even in her nature. But then I saw her strengths. I thought she was a great encourager. She was a very hard worker. So I started to have a little bit of grace towards that. But I do agree with the whole raising your kids according to their personality.
Because they're different. And it goes back to what you said earlier. In older days, I know especially in the African American communities, I had wrote a blog. You remember my sister say, our grandparents did all that, even in the struggle of life. And the light cut on because they had to work. They had to do, so they couldn't do all the nurturing that they knew. They couldn't do all the love and hugs. They knew to do what they knew to do.
Absolutely.
And so when I talked to my mom, she said, well, I didn't get that type of love, so I didn't know how to respond. She kissed us. She worked hard. But when I was 35 years old, and I tell this story all the time, I never heard my mom say she loved me. I knew she did. And one time when I was hanging up on the phone with her, I said, okay, have a good night. Talk to you later. She said, all right, love you. And it shocked me. So I called her back so I could hear it again, just to make sure that's what she said. She said, okay. And I was calling back. I said, yeah, and made up some conversation. And then she said, okay, then love you. It broke my heart in a good way. Because I knew she loved me, but she never said it.
To hear it.
To hear it. Hear your mom say that they love. Now I tell John every day, girl, I love you. Love you. Have a good day. Love you. Love you. Because that's what I needed.
That's powerful.
That's really powerful.
So, Rose, let me ask you this. Somewhere in the book, it talked about naming what you're missing, that you can't get to the solutions and you can't really break free from it if you don't know how to name it. And so being able to name, for some of you, you may go on a deep dive today. And you might, what they call an internet search and sweep, and you'll try to dive deeper into mother hunger. So that you can identify it, because the sooner you can identify what the problem is or what the void is, the sooner you can get access to the healing that you need. Can you speak to that? We're towards the end of our episode here, but I would really like to hear your thoughts.
So, and Miss McDaniel also spoke about this also in some videos I watched her in. And I agree with her. When you put a name to it, it gives you a direction to go for healing. When you have a name for what it is that you're missing, because sometimes we'll have this restlessness, like, what is this? What's going on? But when you get that enlightenment, you're like, okay, now I kind of see, what I need to do. So in terms of mother hunger, and we know that it is the lack of nurturing. It is a lack of maybe affection and attention. It is the absence of a parent. It is the emotional unavailability, and how that shows up as an adult. You may have an addiction towards love, towards certain intimate relationships. You may have drug addiction. That's a little bit deeper. I know she called that third degree mother hunger. And so you may have attachment issues. And this can cause, like you said, dysfunctional relationships with people. And so once again, we go back to awareness. Now you're aware of what it is. And now you know how it shows up for you. So now we need to start to do the work within to figure out what it is. Some of us may need to seek out professional counseling, and some of us may need to dial back when it comes to our kind of relationships. And so that's why this topic is very personal for me, because I am realizing, okay, this is what's going on with me. Let me dial back. So lately I've been dialing back and reassessing some connections and relationships that I have, so that I can see, okay, this isn't healthy. This is a result of me having that void, having some mother hunger in a certain place. Let me try to fix that. And it's extremely difficult because you're used to operating a certain way. So now you have a mind change. You
figured out how to survive. But in reality, you need to be able to thrive.
Exactly.
And so you want to thrive. And I really would just encourage you mamas to continue your path of being whole, being healthy, putting your mental health as a priority.
Absolutely.
Because, I say this often, you're a mother for the entirety of your life.
Yes.
You know, that's your child, and you're going to mother them. You're going to mother them differently.
Yes.
And so you need to be able to give yourself the grace to grow and to change with your children as they're changing. But you also need to stay healthy.
Yes.
You know, in every area, physically, mentally, spiritually, all of that. You stay healthy in that area. And so you may need, you know, a therapist, or you may need to extend and go deeper in your relationship with the Lord.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, He can listen. He's the one that created you,
That's
so He can
right.
get right to the source,
That's
right
right.
to the issue, right to the case. You know, so that's, you know, putting yourself as the priority benefits everyone else that's
That's
attached
right.
to your life, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this was a great conversation. I hope that you find what you need, in the sense that you're able to start naming it, so that you can start dealing with it. And I always say this: God won't give you everybody, but He'll give you somebody.
He will.
Yes.
And so I can almost promise that God's put somebody in your reach, that you can get the nurturing and the affirmations and the guidance and whatever you think that you're missing right now. With God, there's always a solution.
As always.
There's always a solution.
Always.
I think sometimes, are we looking for the solution?
That's right.
Or do we want to just sit in the pain?
Yes.
Or sit in the self-pity, or whatever the circumstances may be. But when we want to get to the root, we want a solution, God's always got one. So thank you all for joining us today at Sister Friends Cups and Conversation. Don't forget, Something to Sip On is next. Thank you for joining the conversation today. Relationships matter. We're going to keep on talking so that we can live the lives that we were designed to live. Don't forget, Something to Sip On is next. This is Something to Sip On. So I'm going to say, Sister Friends, name your stuff. And then after you name it, get to work. Kathy, what are you sipping on?
And you did that so to the point. This is, we were talking about, when the camera stopped, self-awareness, and I looked it up: conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. What you didn't get, whether in your mother's hunger or any of that, what you didn't get, give back to your children. So that desire that you had, those motives of why you do what you do, give back to your children what you wanted from your mom.
That's good.
Yeah.
Miss Ashley Rose?
So my something to sip, and I mentioned this on the when we cut also, I want to also say, mother yourself, nurture yourself, give yourself that time and attention. Go to counseling, get your hair done, your nails done, spend time in a quiet, whatever you need to bring yourself peace.
Yes.
Do that for you.
That's good.
Yes.
All right. Chantal, you have the last word.
And I agree with the two ladies, self-awareness and finding a therapist that really helps, a Christian therapist, to point out what is it that the Lord wants to heal. He is definitely the problem finder, but He's also the problem solver.
Yes.
Amen.
That's good.
Thank you for joining us. That's Something to Sip On.